Hey, what's up, guys? It is now 2023. Happy New Year, everyone. I wish you guys the best. I wish you guys to set yourself some goals. Think of something that you truly want, something that you really want. It can be self-improvement. It can be, help for a family member. It doesn't matter what it is, but try to think of something you truly want. And I wish you guys the best in that regard. Alright, so let's move on to the footage for today. So we got a 100 kill streak arena challenge. Now, let's spoil it really quickly. Did we get to 100 kill streak in the arena? The video is only 20 something minutes. Well, the answer is yes, we did get it. So the full footage of the 100 kill streak in the arena is 2 hours and a half and will be linked uncut, obviously, in the video description. Now, full disclosure, I did this challenge in Dark Souls 3 as well. When we did this in Dark Souls 3, it took us much longer. It took us actually, I think, over 3 hours when we did this for Dark Souls 3, or close to 3 hours. It was much quicker in Elden Ring, and I attribute that to a few things, namely the time to kill, and also probably the tactics I was going for. So I was using the great bow here as an opener, kind of to filter out all the people that did not know how to counter it. So that was a big deal and a big time saver as far as, kind of being efficient with killing people as fast as possible. So all the players that did not know how to counter the great bow, which I will explain to counter it in this video, actually. But yeah, that helped out tremendously to speed up the process of killing, 100 people in a row. But yeah, moving on here. This challenge was actually much harder than I thought it would be, because again, when we did this in Dark Souls 3, we actually got this the first time. So the first time we attempted to go for 100 kill streak, we actually managed to pull it off on our very first attempt. Here in Elden Ring, we tried this, I forgot the exact date, not so long ago, like, I think something like 3 days ago I went for this. But we got it on the day we tried it, but we did not get it on our first attempt. So full disclosure, we did die before reaching our goal initially. So on my very first attempt, we actually went all the way to 95 kill streak and died, I forgot, it was either on the 95th one or on the 96th one. So yeah, we pretty much almost did it the first time again, but we got stopped in the process by a good player that, unfortunately, when you fight in the arena like this, a big challenge is that, it's not getting a good player once, but when you get to fight the same good players over and over and over again, it gets pretty difficult to win every single time. So you're not the only one that adapts. The other good players will also adapt to what you're doing and will change things around. So to never slip up and let yourself get killed by other good players for, the span of so many matches is actually very challenging. And so I really think that this challenge was particularly difficult, even more so in Elden Ring, because you don't have as much room for error because of the time to kill. Either way, though, it was actually a blast. I enjoyed this challenge, and I kind of discovered that I can actually, I've never really had that before, but I was actually getting nervous toward the end for the subsequent attempt at getting it. And I didn't know I had that, but I was actually starting to play like too cautious in some of these matches, so I had to kind of rethink at what I was doing and try to kind of refocus my game to play more of a game where I'm comfortable doing a healthy mix of being aggressive and not being overly passive. So it was definitely something of an adjustment throughout this whole challenge. Now, you guys are probably interested in the setup I'm using. I know you guys love Great Lances. I know we got a big audience that loves Great Lance, that is really fond of Great Lances, and I know it's your favorite weapon, but I really love Great Lances. I love Great Bows, so I'm basically playing with what I think is for when I'm playing with it. I think it's definitely one of my strongest setup. I haven't played with two-handed thrusting sword much since the patch 1.08, so I can't say if two-handed thrusting sword still beats double lance. I can't speak much for that yet, but we'll figure that out as time goes by. But as of right now, like there's no doubt that double great lance is either the best setup in the game or probably the second best. It's one or the other. As far as the great bow goes, the great bow is probably the best invasion weapon in my opinion. Now, is it the best dueling weapon? We got a lot of kills with the great bow. Actually, most of our kills throughout this challenge was with the great bow, but the thing with the great bow is it's a kind of a knowledge check. It's once you know how to fight it, you can go for that same strat over and over and it will always work. And most people don't really know how to fight it, so it's a really good filter, because if the majority of the players don't know how to fight it, well, it's like you get a bunch of matches where the win is much easier to get. Obviously, when you're using the great bow, you need to know how to aim and how to aim properly, so these are not necessarily free kills. You know, the big challenge with the great bow is not only just that, it still follows the fundamental principle of Souls games, which is timing. So where you don't really need spacing with the great bow, you definitely need to time your shots, not just aim them right, but you need to time them to roll catch and whatnot. So the great bow, like, it seems very, very strong in the hands of a good player, but you can definitely play against it. Now, as far as a good counter for a great bow, there's multiple things that can actually prevent the great bow users from cranking a shot. Some of the more common mistakes that people do, the first and most dangerous mistake that players do against a great bow is they run away. So this is the thing you really don't want to do, is to start to play passive, or they will pull a shield out. Like, you can shoot behind guard. So playing passive, not aggressing, and, you know, hiding behind a shield, those are really bad ways to approach a great bow. It makes it actually easier for the great bow users when that happens. So now that this is out of the way, what are the best ways to attack it? Well, the one and most simple and effective method of dealing with a great bow is simply endure. So if you endure and rush a great bow, you're gonna force the great bow player to switch weapon. It's as simple as that. And if you endure at a good range, the great bow will be forced to pull out, so not release the shot. And if they do release the shot and it hit you during your endure, you get a chance at a guaranteed punish. So the great bow cannot shoot the player that is doing endure at you know, at a fairly close range or medium range. At long range, you have more than enough time to reach your opponent. So you endure once, you get the close range, the great bow is forced off, and if the great bow attempts to shoot you, you have time for a guaranteed punish, because the great bow has a decent amount of recovery after you shoot the shot. Now, obviously, latency always plays a factor into that, so for some people that are playing on high latency, it might not always be a guaranteed punish, but for the most part, if you endure and the great bow releases the shot as you endure and rush your opponent, the endure is going to result in you either getting a guaranteed punish on the great bow or starting to apply pressure kind of freely, where the great bow player is kind of helpless and needs to change weapon. Another counter that I've seen people use in the arena throughout this footage, I've seen some people use a glintstone scraps right at the start of the fight, and that also prevented the great bow from cranking the shot. So if you just, crack some glintstone consumable right at the start of the match, well, the great bow cannot just stand still and crank the shot. So that's also very effective. Obviously, though, you can't just crack the consumable, you need to rush as well. But it all comes down to various tools that let you push forward, preventing the great bow from stunning you. So it all comes down to that. Obviously, if you have a build with projectiles and of any kind, that also works. If you throw a frostbot at the great bow, that will likely stun them, unless of course they have like a very high robustness and whatnot. but any projectile that stuns will give you enough time to close the distance. So now that this is out of the way, let's move on to the lances. So obviously lances, probably my favorite setup in the game. The reason I like the lances so much is that it has a complete moveset. So every attack that the Great Lance has can serve a purpose. So you have a very good running R1, you have a very good jumping R1, you have a very good jumping L1 for the power stance for high damage, you have a very good crouching L1 crouch attack, and you also have a very good crouch R1, which has some better anti-air capabilities than the crouch L1. So when you combine all of that together, you get a very, very complete moveset that forces you to utilize kind of all the new Elden Ring mechanics, such as, you know, the crouch and the jump, and various timings for each attack as well. So even the running attack for the Great Lance, like the train wreck kind of attack, that's also pretty decent at catching people with low poise. So I do that sometimes when I fight people that light roll that do not have high poise. I sometimes go for that kind of train attack where you just chew them apart, and that usually is enough to stun them if they're like one of them like squeaky mages and whatnot. So that's very useful for that. Obviously though, you would not want to go for that running attack against someone with poise, because they'll just tank the first part and backstab you. But yeah, even that attack serves a good purpose for the Great Lance. You know, now I know what a lot of people are going to be saying. You know, it's easy. You know, it's strongest setup in the game. Easy win, free wins. But as much as I do agree that the setup is extremely strong, I will really stand by the fact that using the Great Lance does require, I think, a high amount of skills. It's extremely easy to kill players that don't know how to use the lances properly. It's one of those setups where you need to learn how to play the setup well in order to perform well with it. And it's not true for every setup. For instance, counterpoint for that, people who use normal double spears, right, like the double naginata or double pikes, those weapons require a very low amount of effort to kill with. So you can pretty much give a double naginata to anyone really, and they will perform well with it, because the high damage from the power stance, double naginata, the high damage, the high forward momentum, the speed, everything together, it's all pretty straightforward. There's not as much variety and like nuances in the timing of your attacks. You just pretty much have so much range on your L1s. You don't need to crouch to get access to it. You don't need to jump as much. Like the damage is very, very high with double naginata. So I think when it comes to a lot of these weapons that people always tend to say like this is OP, this needs a nerf, I still think that it's still a lot more reflective of the player's ability when it comes to something like lances than a lot of the setups that people gravitate more toward. But that's not without saying that Great Lance do not need a nerf. I actually do think that Great Lance, as well as every power stance setup, do need a damage nerf, and I think a pretty significant one. For me, what would make the Great Lance balance, obviously not a speed nerf because that would kill the weapon, it's a nerf to the damage to a point where the crouch attack can get out-traded. So I think that would be really the turning point that would balance out the weapon. If you cannot trade with that crouch attack against, you know, various things, whether it's a colossal R1, whether it's an R2 from a Kestis, whether it's you know, you name it, whatever setup, whether it's an R1 from a Claymore, the moment you cannot win the damage trade with that crouching attack, it's going to change it. It's going to change the matchups tremendously. So this is what I think this setup needs, and I think it would all be in a very good place, as well as other power stance setup that do like a tremendous amount of damage. If they make it so that power stance damage is more in line with the rest of the weapons that are in the game that are not necessarily used power stance, I think we will be in a much better spot. As far as Great Bow, I don't think the Great Bow needs any nerf really. Like I said, it's more like a knowledge check, and it's extremely good against passive players. And something that's good against passive people, it's like kind of almost a godsend in a game like that. You know, Souls games have always favored so much the passive players, and in Elden Ring, a tool like the Great Bow is just so goddamn valuable, where if someone just starts to get passive and runs away, you have a legitimate way of catching them reliably at range. So I think this is like the Great Bow is just absolutely fantastic. Like the counter to it is even aggression itself, so it's almost like it's a match made in heaven, you know. It rewards the players that are aggressive in either one of the cases. So the player that's aggressing the Great Bow is going to be rewarded because the Great Bow can't do anything, and then the player that's passive against the Great Bow is going to be punished because the Great Bow punishes passivity. So Great Bow being very effective, but also I think very well designed. And like I said, as long as you run Endure, like personally I think you can run Endure on every build on a pocket weapon. So for my particular build, I always have Endure ready on a pocket dagger. So I always recommend people still get, even though I hard swap a lot, I still recommend people get a soft swap weapon, either to soft swap the critical or to get access to another Ash of War quickly, such as Endure in that particular case. So this is my go-to. Like, I have a back pocket Fire Misericord dagger with Endure that I really like to use to counter situations like that where I don't really have I don't really have much time to react to stuff like a Dragon Breath out of nowhere. You know, various attacks, like someone pulls out a Great Bow like that, I can just Endure and rush them and get some punishes. So I would highly recommend you guys start to rock Endure as on a back pocket weapon, or to have it easy access for a swap or something like that. I think that's a good way to go about it. And so I would highly recommend you guys try it out. It's I think it was a good experience, right? That 100 kill streak. It felt extremely rewarding completing it too. I do think that there's probably a few players out there that can attempt and do this challenge successfully, especially as time goes by. You know, people will improve and whatnot. But yeah, I still stand by it. I think it was actually pretty challenging, and it was a pretty good experience. The hardest thing was definitely, you know, having to fight good players, but not just good players, fighting the same good players multiple times in a row where they try to adapt to what you're doing and try to find a dent in your playstyle. That was actually pretty challenging. And then the other challenging part was fighting players that are lag lords. Man, we had some attempts that ended from internet savants. Like, some people are just so laggy in this game that sometimes you just literally cannot do anything whatsoever, and you almost have to get lucky to get through them. And which is why in that whole challenge, I realized after one of my kill streak attempt got stopped by someone who was extremely laggy, I realized I had to block laggy players when we fought them. So I had to make it through the fight. That was one, but after that fight, I told myself, all right, every laggy player, I'm going to have to block him. Otherwise, it's going to be very painful and also kind of unfair to complete that challenge, because obviously fighting someone that has no animation, there's really, you know, not much you can do. There's not really anything to learn. It's not fun, you know. There's no substance, no good thing that comes out of that. So you kind of have to work around it. So final words for this, you know, try this challenge. It's a lot of fun. Alright, that's going to be it for me today though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I wish you guys the best and have a happy new year.